Three tomatoes are walking down the street. Papa tomato, mama tomato, and baby tomato.
Playing Catch-Up presents.
Starring Lindsay Hinkle and Jamie Nelson.
So this is Playing Catch-Up, is it? I prefer something with a little more kick.
Everybody's favorite condiment-themed entertainment podcast.
Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby!
Hot sauce.
Nobody puts ketchup on a hot dog.
And this is Hot Sauce on PlayingCatchupPodcast.com. The theme of the month is art. I am Jamie Nelson, and with me, my co-host, Lindsay Hinkle.
Hi, Jamie.
Lindsay, what's your favorite piece of artwork in the whole world?
In my living room, my wonderful roommate, Allison Bois-Demas, is the artist, and it is a drawing of Bob Saget. She gets mad when I call it Bob Saget. It's Danny Tanner.
Oh.
It's really excellent, and whenever I have people over, they look at the wall and they're like, "That's Bob Saget," and I'm like, "Why, yes, it is."
That's really peculiar.
I love it. It's so excellent. She's really talented. There are a lot of her drawings around the house, and I like them all, but that's my favorite.
Would have been slightly more relevant if it was John Stamos.
And Uncle Jesse is, related to Danny Tanner.
And we're terrified of him suing us if we talk about him.
Oh, yes. Maybe we should extend that fear to Bob Saget as well.
We're extending the John Stamos fear to Bob Saget.
So who do we have in the studio today, Jamie?
This is artist and illustrator Stephen Player.
Hi, Stephen.
How are you, Stephen?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And before we launch right into it, I do have a question that I've always wanted to know. I'm a little worried that our audience, it'll be over their heads, and I will try not to be too sophisticated, but in your professional and artistic opinion, what's your favorite color?
Now, that's something that's changed over the years. I used to say blue on this occasion. But you see, the trouble is with favourite colours is that there are so many colours under the same name. You know, there's a yellow that you hate, and there's a yellow that you love. There's a blue that you hate, there's a blue that you love. So in the end, it's very hard to actually put a name on that. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass on that question.
Okay. Well, that was quite a good answer. So let's talk about you. You are an illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
You've done books, and you did the Discworld map and the Guards game. What have you done recently? What do you have coming down the pipeline?
Well, at the moment, I'm actually doing another Terry Pratchett linked project, which is a limited edition print. There's going to be about 100 of them apparently, and I'm painting that on the computer. Otherwise, I have a couple of private projects commissions, but recently, due to the economy, etc., especially in England, where a lot of my work comes from, illustration work has been pretty thin on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you also teach as well, right?
Yes, I do. I teach at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, which is a great pleasure. I basically went there at the beginning to get my green card, but now I got my green card long ago, and I just enjoyed it so much. What you tend to find as an artist or as a freelance artist is that you live at home in your spare room or something, wherever you do your work. And when I spent, about 15 years doing that before I started to teach. And it was a kind of a shock to the system to have to talk to lots of people and not be shut away in your little room with just your friends in the evening and things like that. So, yes, it was quite an experience which I saw as negative at the beginning, but now I love, and is not my social life exactly, but my exposure to especially young people.
Yeah, it's sort of contrary to the artist's needs.
Yeah.
Get up and stand in front of people and talk about it.
That's it, rather than being up in your little ivory tower or whatever.
So, in addition to all of that, you've also done the concept art for the film Hogfather, right?
I did.
It's very different than, painting something and then having it appear as a print in a book, because you're sort of inspiring wardrobe people and CGI people and set builders and stuff. And
Absolutely.
to actually see what you what you have designed to actually be in existence, either on the screen or as part of a set. How surreal is that?
That was the first time and only time, actually, that's ever happened, and it was strange, especially when, because, I follow films like everybody else, and I'm very aware of, I have some books on, film art. I'm very aware of how that art tends to change from the sort of conception to the realization in the movie. I don't know what pressures come into play, but there is a lot of stuff that seems to go on between those two events. And so I didn't expect my designs to appear as I did them. I thought, well, these may be somehow incorporated in the final thing. But there were a lot of things in that movie that were straight from my drawings, and I was quite surprised, to tell you the truth. I wasn't expecting it. I decided to keep my expectations low on that front. And so I was very surprised to see them realized.
For our listeners who've seen the film, do you want to list a few of the things that were pretty much exactly what you designed?
Now, this is where you're going to test my memory a little.
Oh.
But I will try. But because my Terry Pratchett, is based on my work and
Sure.
things that I've done, and I do a lot of other stuff too. So I remember the sock-eating creature.
Yes.
Was pretty much 100% from what I drew, and Hex, the computer, and of course the Bone Castle. At least the exterior was exactly as I had drawn it.
Well, those are the best designed parts of the movie.
Apparently, Timothy Spall's son was employed as the actor for the God of Hangovers, Bilious.
Really?
That was on the strength of the, this is my understanding, on the strength of my drawing, that was just happened to look like him.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
So that was weird.
Right. I went to your presentation at the Terry Pratchett Love Fest, as I will call it, in Madison, which was fantastic. And I loved seeing the different parts of the steps for each drawing, like whether it's something that naturally happens in the process or it's the stuff that you go back and forth with, like a client with, because like, oh, have it look a little more like this, and then you do another draft. What is the most number of drafts you had to go through worth working with a client? Well,
I mean, that can be a problem. I mean, sometimes a client will, it will seem like the client just wants to have an impression on your work. They want to make their presence known. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just have an issue with a certain character. And actually, it was a Terry Pratchett thing. It was the Feegles. I did the We Free Men, the illustrated We Free Men.
Right.
And the Feegles had not yet been depicted, really. So I had to, or at least I had to depict them in my own way. So I did a Feegle in a beautifully rendered style, and so, well, he says of his own work, and sent it off to Terry to think that it was just going to be passed through. And then, of course, it came back saying, oh, no, this is nothing like what we want. And so I did another one which wasn't quite as rendered and sent that off, and they go, oh, no, too cute, or not cute enough, etc. Back and forth. I don't remember quite how many times, but that was the longest process as to defining a character or a single image.
When you were in Madison, did you get a chance to stop by the art fair in the square?
I actually did. I get up very early. I'm always awake at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning.
Is that because of the time difference, or?
No, that's just me. I just do that every morning.
Even if you're in California.
but yeah, that's me. So I'm used to having these sort of early morning sort of wanders around places and things, and that's what I did because it was nice. And Madison is very hot. I hadn't realized quite how hot and humid.
Well, we have that reputation for, I grew up in Madison. We have that reputation for being so cold, in Wisconsin, but the summers are hot.
That was it. I mean, I came back and people said, how was it? And I said, it was so hot. It's like the only other hottest place I can remember is Egypt that I've been to. Because I took 4 shirts for the whole 4 days thinking, which is normal for me. But of course, as soon as I stepped out of those front doors, I needed a new shirt immediately. So I was completely stuck. But yes, I went and wandered around the art the stalls as they were putting them up. And I think the whole city was pretty amazingly sort of idyllic.
Oh, thanks. I don't know about you. When I look through art shows and stuff, there's always like a couple motifs or symbols that if I see it, I'm sort of like, oh, that thing represents me as a person, and I have to have that. And for me personally, that's goats and carnivals. And if it's a goat in a carnival, like, forget it. I'm reaching for my wallet. Do you have anything that you see in other people's work of art, even if it's like a style that like calls out to you more than other things?
Oh my God, this is a tricky one to throw at me. I've never thought about this. What do I what draws me to things? I mean, the human body. Mm-hmm. definitely. I mean, a beautiful depiction of the human body definitely would draw me, because I think it draws anybody. Basically, that's our instincts. But and I'm always drawn to anything that's semi-erotic. But otherwise, I don't have a particular, creature that I collect or anything like that. No, I'm sorry.
So I'm just a little weird. That's all. That's okay.
It is okay.
When did you start drawing? Were you a big drawer as a kid?
Absolutely, yes. That was my thing. And I don't know about everybody else, but my impression is that we all end up doing what we happen to be good at when we were children. And when you get to middle age, like I am now at 46, you start to think, why am I doing what I'm doing, and all of that. And you look back and you think, well, actually, it was all a matter of a catalogue of accidents. And it was a thing that your parents thought, oh, look at him, he's drawing that, and it looks just like it, and something like that. And you think, oh, I'll do that again because parents like that. And it makes me popular, and then at school it makes you popular, etc., etc. So, yes, I think that I started to draw when I was about, before I can remember. My parents used to nag me to go out and play and climb trees and things, but I just wanted to sit in and draw. And that was just how it was all I ever wanted to do, I guess. But because I think I got a lot of praise for it very early on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I feel like the things that I did obsessively as a child, I still do obsessively as an adult. And I thought maybe it's just that I never really grew up, but that makes a little more sense.
Well, and you also just get immersed in something, because I think you just follow it a little more for whatever reason. You do something else, and that creates more interest, and you get more information, and you start down this little avenue that ends up to be sort of the course of your life. Mm-hmm. Strangely accidental, I think.
And I quite like that a lot of your drawings are quite dark or gritty, because as odd as it is to say it, it reminds me of like my childhood and the things I was interested in drawing in, because you'd have the kid next to me with their crayons drawing rainbows and flowers and stuff, and I would always be drawing like werewolves and ghosts and monsters and all of that stuff. So yeah, your drawings definitely remind me of that.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, I was just the kid that was into the scary, the rubber spiders and all of that. So at least when I was a kid in the 70s, that was the sort of height of the merchandise you could get. But I was into all of that stuff, and just like so many boys of that age. And because I drew, I wanted to draw that, and that just evolved and became a little more sophisticated as I did.
Oh.
And and I think, I mean, if you actually look at people, even the most outrageously successful people, you can kind of see the little nerdy kid that they were.
Yeah.
Just by the route that they chose,
Sure.
Do you still have any of your old sketchbooks or drawings from when you were a kid?
Well, what was actually funny was I went back for the first time. I've been in America now for 11 years. Mm-hmm. And I went back to see my family for the first time in 9 years, a couple of years ago, obviously. And when I got there, we had a sort of a meal and everything out in my sister's garden. And they had found some portfolio that had been stuck under a bed, forever, full of my stuff from school. So, yes, I suddenly discovered this whole treasure trove of, I don't know if treasure is quite the word, but a massive amount of drawings and things that I did when I was a kid. And it was actually strange. It was like meeting old friends that you'd almost forgotten, and then suddenly, oh my God, I spent hours and hours over that drawing.
Was it as good as you remembered, or was it sort of like, wow, I remember that being a lot better?
What I should say here is that they're not as good as I remembered, because that would be, show humility. But I was actually kind of impressed.
Oh.
I expected them to be worse than they were. I was kind of like, oh no, actually that drawing isn't bad, because I teach now, you see.
Yeah.
So I know the levels that tend to be around, and I thought, no, actually I was pretty good for that age.
Right. Well, that's impressive. I had I must have been like 7 or something, and I drew a cemetery, which, because I'm morbid, as we already established. Uh-huh. And it was like the best drawing of a cemetery ever. And because I had one of those sketchbooks that had the very loosely glued in pages that always fall out, I somehow lost this fantastic cemetery picture. And I didn't find it for another 10 years, but for that entire 10 years, I never really forgot that I had lost this amazing drawing that would be the best drawing that I will have ever drawn in my whole life.
Uh-huh.
And of course, when I found it, 10 years later, it had changed behind my back, and it was like the worst drawing ever. And it just reminds me, the same thing must have happened to Bono with his lyrics that he lost in his briefcase, and then he found them years later, and they were terrible. But he had always been telling everyone that they were the best lyrics ever.
Uh-huh. Well, I guess it all depends on how sympathetic you are with your sort of, child you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess you could be a little bit stricter, or you can be a little more lenient. Yeah. but no, and I do think I actually, even though it sounds like a joke, I do think that it depends on how you feel about yourself and as a child. And I now look back at myself as a child in a kind of affectionate way, and maybe I'm a little bit more lenient with him than I was at the time. So I think that does have a factor. I remember digging out some stuff that I had written, and that was atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. And I hate writing just because of that. I think 10 minutes later I look at what I've written and I think, oh my God, what were you thinking?
Well, you're developing very fast as a writer then.
Well, no, because that puts me off. This is the thing again.
Yeah, I'm a writer as well. We have that thing where we say, write something, then put it in a drawer for a year, and then come back and write it again.
I would never write more than one thing if that happened, because I'd rewrite it every time. That's the trouble.
In college, I took a couple of art classes, and we had this teacher. We called him BPJ because it stood for Beloved Professor Joel. I think this would be a great lesson for your students because you teach perspective, right?
I do, among other things.
Yeah, it's a lesson on perspective, and it's also a little bit morbid. He tells the story of when he was driving through the snow, and he took a back road, and he hit a deer. And he gets out of his car, and he checks, and the deer is dead. There's no saving the deer. So he feels really bad, and he gets back in his car, and he drives only a few yards, and bam, he hits a second deer. And he gets out of the car, that deer is dead too, and he looks back at the first deer, and he's like, wow, that deer looks a lot smaller than this deer. And then he walks over to the first deer, and he looks back at the second deer, and he goes, wow, now that deer looks smaller. And then he suddenly realizes, oh, the farther away you are from an object, the smaller it is. And this was our art teacher's way of explaining.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, they're very memorable. I mean, yes, I don't think anyone would ever forget that.
Exactly. You can have that one.
Thank you. I will use it every semester.
Awesome. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you usually like to draw from memory or imagination as opposed to pure observation, right?
That's correct.
Is that like a code that you live by, or? It
is, to a degree. What seems to be strange, at least in America and with current students, is that reference is seen as being completely acceptable. When I was a child, when I was first in school and trying to impress everybody with how good I could draw, if you were found to have copied it from a photograph, then that totally negated the whole thing. And everyone would just be like, oh, you cheated, and that's, you can't draw really. So I couldn't actually do that. So I forced myself to learn to draw so that I could draw things from imagination, because that was all that was valid. Because it was my only strength, I had to really make it, as strong as possible. And thank God, because it's really put me in good stead for my career. Somehow, I don't know what strange little, village of the damned I was living in, because it doesn't seem to have affected anybody else, this attitude, but it was very strong at my school. And while everyone else is happy to use reference, I always feel very guilty and just like to basically process it through my imagination and then draw what I remember. And that is, of course, inaccurate, and so the whole thing has a certain style for that reason.
Well, maybe that's why you tend to do a lot more fantasy-type stuff, because it is so based on imagination.
Absolutely. But thank God, like I say, and I love creating rather than just reproducing. I do feel that is what an artist should do, and if you're just going to amass a collection of photographs and put them into an image just by reproducing them, I feel it's another strain of art.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that there's a certain feeling of being a god when you're a painter. You're creating everything that you're putting on that canvas. You're creating a world, and either you can have that huge pleasure and explore that, or you can just choose images from our world and just arrange them on a page. And I think that's very different.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess that's why, as I said, I'm a writer. Like, I really hate doing nonfiction.
Right, because you're so restricted. You're so hemmed in.
I feel drawing and writing are both sort of escapism. It's getting beyond the everyday, and if I'm just copying the everyday, it's not really getting me anywhere.
Well, there's a definite use for it, and there's a definite, and I can, draw from life, and I get a great pleasure from doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate people that can do it well, but I just think it's a different discipline. It's like a musician who plays music or a musician who writes music, and they're not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can be the same person, but it's not the same. It's not the same process.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you like to be surrounded by your art? I know some artists will like decorate, their walls and everything with their own art. Like I think Jim Henson and other artists, when they're relaxing after they don't want all their stuff up on their walls and that sort of thing. Which are you?
I am actually the one. Well, not by choice really, but I have a lot of my paintings around just because I can't get them to sell. so, I mean, rather than have them all getting warped behind some door or something, because I've got a small apartment, I've got them up on the wall, and yeah, I know that they're like family now.
They're in disguise. Well, we're getting to the end. Where can people find you? You've got playergallery.com.
That's right. That's my website, and that's the way to contact me or to anything that comes up. That all goes through there. I have no other. Oh, I'm on Facebook as well. That's it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
This has been Hot Sauce, brought to you by PlainKetchupPodcast.com. Please subscribe, rate, and comment on iTunes. Check back every Monday for a new celebrity guest interview. You may also want to check out our hilarious Wednesday videos on youtube.com/PlainKetchup. That's PLAINKETCHUP. Sign up for our newsletter on PlainKetchupPodcast.com to be entered into our monthly drawings. We give away t-shirts, music, stickers, and more from our guests. Please like us on Facebook.com/PlainKetchup and follow us on Twitter @PlainKetchup. Don't forget to support this project by buying Plain Ketchup swag at our Cafe Press store. Have a question? Email Jamie and Lindsay at gmail.com. That's JAIME and LINDSEY @gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay saucy.
Stephen Player. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes. How else would you pronounce it?
I don't know. People pronounce names weird.
Like, wait, are you looking at player?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an alternative.
Plier, or it could be plur.
Player.
I don't know.